one of the most important jobs of the Secretary of State is every 10 years following the census, the Secretary of State is part of the Board of Reapportionment, which deals with redistricting, the redrawing of State House and State Senate lines. And this is a huge process, one that requires a tremendous amount of organization and a certain skill set if you're going to be effective. It's also a process that in some states has been incredibly controversial, probably too controversial. In Texas, they've done a terrible job and had a polarizing factions that did not get along and made the public lose trust in the process. So one of the things that I'm really focused on in my aspect of being part of the redistricting process is making sure that it's an open, accountable, transparent, and sensible process. That's what I stand for. It's always been my public record to work on those issues. I call it oats. It's not particularly glorious or catching a lot of headlines, but it's what works. And in government, those are the principles that I've always espoused, and I will, in 2011, working with the governor and the Attorney General, a three-person board, to make sure that people have faith that redistricting made sense and that it was a good product in the end, one that they can trust. I've always been for openness in government. Some people forget that I served on the Pulaski County School Board. We had a lot of situations there where the press wanted access to documents or they wanted access to our executive meetings. I was a staunch defender of the public meetings rule and the FOI rules. I can remember a time in the late or early 2000s, I should say, where the Attorney General gave an opinion that a school board could not take a retreat outside of its district without violating the public meetings rule. And so our school district kind of thumbed its nose at that and took a trip, and I said, look, the Attorney General has spoken. People aren't going to trust that we're meeting in public if we take some well-heeled retreat to some resort, and so I refused to go. They ended up canceling the meeting because of it. So that's an example of I've been a staunch defender for a long time of FOI and will continue to be a staunch defender as the next Secretary of State. One of the things that I'm really proud of is the technological advances that we've been able to make in my office. We were the first county in Arkansas to provide a sample ballot online. This sounds like a pretty simple thing, but let me tell you, it isn't. In any given election, there might be 200 different ballot styles, and we had to get with our computer programmers to figure out how to tie an individual person's record to the ballot they would get. And it took a lot of development. I had to push and plead with my folks to make it happen, make them understand it was a priority. And when we did, in the election of 2008, it was a tremendous feeling to see people when they were coming in to early vote, and they would have these ballots in their hand that they had printed off of our website, and it made the process smoother. I think it gave people a sense that their local government was on their side, trying to make it easier for them to exercise their right to vote. And as it relates to redistricting, what I want to do is make sure that we get all the information out there. I will guarantee you that we will have a lot of public meetings, and not just in every congressional district, but in every region of the state. And we'll do as many as we have to do. I'm a very customer-driven person, so if there is more demand for public meetings, then we'll schedule more public meetings. When I talk about accountable government, I mean that at the end of the day, what you said you were going to do has to get done. It means that the books have to balance. It means that the things that you're responsible for when you take your oath of office, you have to be held to account. One of the things that everyone who, at least in Central Arkansas, who's familiar with the story knows about me, is my strong record on fixing the mess in the Pulaski County voting system. People forget that in 2000, The elections in Pulaski County, Arkansas were worse than Broward County, Florida. We just didn't get the level of national attention because the election in Arkansas between Gore and Bush wasn't as close as it was in Broward County, Florida. But thousands of people were disenfranchised, and that was a terrible situation which has been a blight on our county for years. Well, I put a team together in 2005, and after several years of fixing the problem over and over again, we've got a clean bill of health. The prosecuting attorney who issued a grand jury panel which initially indicted my predecessor has given us that clean bill of health. We were released from federal court monitoring, which is a huge development. It means we're not under the specter of somebody from Washington, D.C. flying in to say, to monitor us as if we were Afghanistan or some type of third world country holding an election. We've taken what was a perennial embarrassment and turned it into a point of pride. Trust in government is the most sacred thing we have, and I saw a lack of trust and wanted to do something about it. It's really easy for public officials to talk about being transparent in government. It's a great word, and it's something that flows off the tongue really smoothly. But doing it, being transparent, is tough, because the things that you're being transparent about are typically the things that are the most controversial issues that you deal with. And so I have embraced transparency, and I have a strong record on this, and plan on being very transparent as Secretary of State, and especially during the redistricting process in 2011. My record with transparency starts in the spring of 2005. Shortly after I had gotten elected, I created a 12-person task force that was bipartisan, and the purpose of that task force was to give me good advice on how to proceed forward with fixing the mess in the voting system. Now, these meetings were public, and what I found was initially the press would show up and they took some interest. Then we had 7 public meetings across Pulaski County, and what I found was the more transparent I was about what we were doing, the less interested people probably were. And I have to believe that's because they thought, if he's willing to open this thing up and tell us everything he's doing, he can't be doing anything wrong. And it's true. I mean, I didn't know that going in that that's how it would work out, but the transparency led to trust. And so I have kept that model throughout my tenure as Pulaski County Clerk. Ultimately, what transparency does is it leads to trust. Trust is the most sacred thing that the public has with their government. And rebuilding the trust in Pulaski County was absolutely critical to make sure that our voting system was what it needed to be. And I was not going to take a step backward. In fact, I was going to run forward to make sure that our transparency rule applied across the board, even to me. I had 10,000 emails that were FOI'd. Some of it was stuff like, I'm going to lunch. It wasn't too interesting, but some of it was more dealing with the office and things that, in the previous time, maybe when I was younger, I would have not liked to have been out there, but I realize you give up a lot when you're in public service, but it's important. Having spent 3 years running a $10 million a year business, which was very, the profit margins were very tight, and you had to control your labor and your food costs and all those sorts of things. It taught me how to read a bottom line. And one of the things the approach I took when I got to the clerk's office is I understood that the dollars in county government were very tight, and that we had to be making common sense decisions, be prioritizing our dollars. One of the things I'm very proud of is that during my tenure as clerk, my maintenance and operation budget, which is the only part of the budget that I actually control, has not increased. The employee part of the budget, which has increased because of salary increases, but I don't control that. That's controlled by the quorum court. I'm certainly happy to get employee raises for my folks because they work hard, but we've kept our M&O budget very tight. And how did we do that? Well, one of the things we've done is we've increased the use of technology. We were the first county in Arkansas to electronically record real estate documents. We'll be the first county in Arkansas to have electronic filing of circuit court documents. Those advances in technologies have significant downstream advantages. People will know that we had a process that was open, accountable, transparent, and sensible. I believe in OATS. Again, it's not something that's going to grab the headlines or it's not as catchy as some of the things you've heard in politics, but it works.